I'm Scottish and live in Scotland, and this happened a few years back in the Highlands. A friend and I decided we'd go camping for the weekend somewhere remote, far away from the noise and people. We settled on a spot way up north, near the ruins of an old stone castle that overlooked a quiet loch. It was a beautiful place, remote and completely still. The kind of place where the air feels heavier and the silence has its own sound. The ruins sat right by the water, and we pitched our tent not far from the crumbling tower. We arrived in the late afternoon, the air crisp and the light lingering the way it does in the Highlands during summer. For a while, it was perfect. Calm wind coming off the loch, that eerie stillness only found this far north. We were looking forward to a relaxing night by the fire. But then the midges came. Anyone who's camped up there knows what I'm talking about. They're like tiny flying devils, mosquito-sized, but worse. You can't escape them. They swarm your face, crawl into your ears, get under your clothes. We tried to hide in the tent, but within minutes, it felt like being trapped in a jar full of them. After an hour of scratching and cursing, we looked at each other and decided it wasn't worth it. By about 11 p.m., we were throwing everything back into the car. We didn't even bother packing properly. We just wanted to get out. We figured we'd drive back home that night, about 4 hours south. The drive started fine. The Highlands at night are pitch black, but the roads up there are single track, and with no other traffic, it's peaceful in its own way. Once you leave the loch, you're surrounded by open moorland and rocky hills. No trees, no houses, no lights for miles. Just darkness, and the occasional glint of the loch in the headlights. About half an hour into the drive, I was just zoning out, focusing on the narrow road ahead, when I caught something out of the corner of my eye. At first I thought it was a shadow, but it looked like something was moving alongside the car. I glanced again, and my stomach just dropped. It looked like a massive black dog, easily the size of a small horse, keeping pace with us on the verge. Its back came level with the bottom edge of the car window. I'm not exaggerating. The thing was huge. We don't have wolves in Scotland. No bears, no big predators at all. Definitely no dogs that size wandering the Highlands in the middle of the night. For a few seconds, I tried to rationalize it. I told myself it must be a shadow, or that I was just tired. It was late, the road was narrow, and maybe I was just seeing things. I didn't mention it to my mate beside me because I didn't want to sound mental. About a minute later, he turned to me, pale as anything, and said, "Did you just see that giant dog next to the car?" I felt my blood run cold. I said, "You saw it too?" He nodded and described it exactly how I'd seen it. Long, black fur, thin but muscular, walking upright like it had some weight in its shoulders. The only difference was that he said it had glowing red eyes. I hadn't seen that. I only caught its outline, but the way he said it made my skin crawl. We both tried to laugh it off, telling ourselves it was just a deer or some trick of the light, but we couldn't shake it. I suddenly remembered something my gran had told me when I was younger, about the giant black dog of Scottish folklore. It's supposed to be an omen of death, seen by people just before tragedy strikes. The thought made me feel sick. We kept driving, both of us on edge, checking the mirrors every few seconds. There was nothing behind us, nothing ahead, just the dark road stretching forever. Then, out of nowhere, a set of headlights appeared behind us. They came up fast, but what was weird was that we hadn't seen them appear from a distance. With how open the landscape was, we should have seen the glow long before they got that close. It was like they'd just blinked into existence. As the vehicle got closer, we realized it was an old, beat-up van. Rust all over, blacked out windows, number plate either covered or unreadable. The kind of vehicle you'd expect in a crime documentary, not the middle of the Highlands at midnight. We assumed it would overtake us, but it didn't. It just stayed behind, matching our speed perfectly. For nearly half an hour, it followed so close we could barely see its headlights in the mirrors. At one point, we pulled over slightly to let it pass, but it just slowed down with us. It didn't try to overtake. It didn't flash its lights. Nothing. Then suddenly it did. The van swung out, overtook us, and pulled right in front, then immediately slowed down to a crawl. And then, without warning, it turned off its headlights. Instant darkness. We were still moving, but now the only thing in front of us was the silhouette of this van, completely black, blocking the beams of our headlights. My mate swore under his breath, and I honestly thought, this is it. This is what the dog was warning us about. We couldn't see where the road ended or what was ahead. After a few seconds of pure panic, the van suddenly veered off onto a dirt track and disappeared into the darkness. We didn't stop to think. I floored it, and we drove well over the limit until we reached the next town. We pulled into a car park beside the police station and just sat there, not talking for a while. We both ended up falling asleep in the car until morning. Even now, neither of us can explain it. We don't know what we saw. Maybe it was a coincidence, maybe not. But every time I think about that night, I get the same feeling I had when I saw that black shape moving alongside us, like something was watching, following, waiting for us to notice. And honestly, I still don't know which part scared me more, the massive black dog that shouldn't exist, or the van that definitely did. A good friend of mine told me this story years ago. He's the stereotypical old big bad trucker. The kind of guy who's been driving since before I was born, smokes like a chimney, and doesn't scare easy. I've seen some weird stuff with him while driving in South Texas, along the border. A good friend of mine told me this story years ago. He's the stereotypical old big bad trucker. The kind of guy who's been driving since before I was born, smokes like a chimney, and doesn't scare easy. I've seen some weird stuff with him while driving in South Texas along the border. He never batted an eye. But while telling me this story, he had goosebumps and this distant look on his face. From this guy, that was about the equivalent of a trembling lip and shit-stained pants. I'll tell this story in the first person, as he told it to me. Years ago, sometime in the late 90s, I was heading out from home in Central Texas, making my way down to Laredo to pick up a load. It was early morning, somewhere around 4 or 5. I'd had a few days off, so I wasn't tired at all. Just me, the road, and the low hum of the diesel. It was one of those narrow 2-lane highways that cut through the middle of nowhere. No houses, no towns, no lights. Just fence line, brush, and the occasional road sign half swallowed by rust. The only sound was the engine and the tires on asphalt. I came around a slow bend when I caught sight of something at the edge of my high beams, a dark shape on the shoulder. I figured it was roadkill, happens all the time out there. But as I got closer, I realized it wasn't just a dead deer. There was something crouched over it. I eased off the throttle, not sure what I was seeing. At first I thought maybe some hunter had stopped to cut off the antlers, but then I saw the thing's arm move. It reached into the deer's belly and pulled something out. That's when it hit me that this person, or whatever it was eating the deer. I could see the wet glint of meat in its hands, and I swear I saw it bring a handful up toward its mouth. Right then, it stopped and turned its head toward me. Not toward the headlights, not toward the sound of the truck. Straight at me. It stood up. Whatever it was tall. Its head and shoulders were still visible above the hood of my truck as I came up on it, and this was an old needle-nosed Pete with a high front end. It was huge, covered in dark brown hair, not like fur, longer, uneven, like a shaggy coat. Broad shoulders, arms hanging low, chest like a barrel. The part that stuck with me were the eyes. They weren't glowing, but they caught the light somehow, and they were fixed on me the entire time. There was awareness in that stare. It wasn't animal curiosity. It was something else. something that understood what I was and where I was sitting. I didn't even think about stopping. My foot went down hard. As I passed, its face turned, tracking me through the driver's side window, and I swear I could still see it looking down at me as the truck roared by. I must have held my breath for half a mile. After that, I just drove. My hands were locked on the wheel, and my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. I didn't look in the mirrors, didn't slow down, just kept the truck pointed south and told myself over and over that it was a trick of the light, a bear, a shadow, anything. It took about 20 minutes before I could breathe normally again. When I finally hit the next junction, I pulled over on the shoulder and stepped out for some air. The night was dead silent. I smoked half a pack before I got back in and drove the rest of the way to Laredo. When I got there at sunrise, I still couldn't shake it. I told a few guys at the yard what I saw, but they laughed, said I must have been seeing things after a few days off. But I know what I saw. A week later, I had to take the same route again. I didn't want to, but that's the job. It was around the same time of night when I hit that stretch of road. I slowed down without even meaning to. The deer was gone, no blood, no sign of anything, just empty pavement and a long line of fence posts. But as I passed that spot, I couldn't help feeling it again, that weight in the air like I was being watched. The hair on my arms stood straight up, and I found myself gripping the wheel tighter until my knuckles hurt. Nothing happened. I didn't see anything this time. But even now, whenever I'm driving a lonely stretch before dawn, I think about that thing, the way it stood there, calm and upright, like it wasn't afraid of anything on this earth. That's it. I don't know what it was. I just know it was real, and I hope to God I never see it again. My dad worked the night shift at a 24-hour gas station back in the 1970s, rural southeast US, middle of nowhere, on a long, lonely stretch of highway. It was one of those places that stayed lit like a lighthouse for truckers, because there wasn't another open station for 40-50 miles either direction. They had a big gravel lot where rigs could park for a nap or grab a sandwich at the little diner booths inside. CB and landline was it. No cell phones, no cameras, no panic buttons. If something went bad, you picked up the receiver and hoped someone answered. He was alone most nights, from 11 to 7. No security, no weapon, just a counter, a cash drawer, and a view of the pumps through plate glass. He used to pass the time stacking cigarettes, wiping the coffee burner, counting the till twice, and chatting with whoever wandered in. You got to know the regulars. Long-haul drivers would roll in at 2 a.m., buy coffee that tasted like roofing tar, and swap road gossip. One night, a guy came in who set every alarm in my dad's gut buzzing. He was wiry, jittery, tight jacket zipped up to his chin, even though it was summer and the air outside still held the day's heat. Tight pants, something long and heavy riding under the jacket at his waist. Kept drifting up and down the aisles, looking at canned beans and motor oil while sneaking little glances over at the counter. Dad felt the hairs on his arms prick. He said it wasn't one thing you could point to and say, that's it, it was all of it together. There happened to be one trucker in the store he sort of knew, not a friend, but the kind of regular who'd nod and shoot the breeze. Dad waited until the guy set his coffee down and said, "Mind sticking around for a minute? That one's giving me a bad feeling." The trucker looked past him, took in the jacket, the way the guy's hands hovered near his waist, and said, "Yeah, I can do that." He leaned his hip against a stool and made himself part of the furniture. Sketchy guy kept pacing, picked up a map, put it back, palmed a pack of gum, then set it down. At one point, he stared at my dad for a count that ran too long, eyes flat, like he was deciding something. Then he blew out a breath, walked outside, got into a blue car, and tore out of the lot. Dad watched the taillights shrink and felt the tight band around his chest ease. Trucker stayed for a bit anyway. They talked about nothing. Weather, roadwork up past the county line. After a while, a couple more fellows came in and slid into the lunch counter booths to split a sandwich. The regular stuck around another 10 minutes, then nodded and said he was going to catch an hour in the sleeper. Dad thanked him and went back to counting change he had already counted. Time moved the way it does on night shift. Coffee burned down and got remade. Bugs tapped the glass and fell. Trucks came through, hissed to a stop, filled, rumbled off. The clock walked toward 3. Dad told himself he'd overreacted. It was late. People look off at that hour. He had work to do, and the drawer balanced, and nothing bad had happened. Then hell hit the lot. A car came in way too fast, dust boiling behind it, and braked hard enough to make the sign out front shudder. A man jumped out before the engine stopped and sprinted for the door, eyes wide and hands shaking. He yelled that he needed a phone. Dad pointed at the landline behind the counter, and the guy leaned over it, stabbing 911 with a finger that didn't seem to know where it was going. He told the dispatcher he'd just pulled into a gas station 40 miles back, the next closest place on that stretch, and found the attendant on the floor, shot, no pulse, register open. No one else around, no CB, no payphone he could see, and he didn't know the area. The only thing he had was a detail he couldn't shake. As he'd pulled into that other station, a blue car had blasted out of the lot, no headlights, plate covered or missing. Dad said the words "blue car" made his mouth go dry. The dispatcher kept the caller on the line. She took the location as best as he could describe it, mile markers and the name painted on a faded sign, and said units were already en route. She asked if there were any injuries at the caller's current location. Dad shook his head, and the guy repeated it into the receiver. She told him to stay put, provide his information, and wait for deputies to arrive. When he hung up, the room went very quiet. The truckers in the booth stared at their plates. Dad felt every beat of his heart in his hands. He looked out at the highway and saw nothing but his own reflection in the glass and the dim glow of the pumps. Deputies showed up fast for the middle of nowhere. They took statements. They asked about the man in the jacket, what time he'd been there, what he looked like, what he touched. Dad described him and the car. Before sunrise, the parking lot was full of long haulers who had pulled in and killed their lights to wait. Word moves fast out there, even without a CB. Men leaned on bumpers and spoke in low voices. Someone brewed a fresh pot and passed styrofoam cups around. The regular from earlier came in rubbing sleep out of his eyes and asked my dad if he was all right. Dad nodded and told him thanks again for sticking around. The regular just shrugged like it wasn't worth mentioning. By mid-morning, they had the guy. Couple counties over, same car, same jacket, on drugs, on paper, already in and out for robberies. Someone spotted the blue car at a diner and called it in. Deputies rolled him up without a fight. My dad went in to give a formal statement and later to sit behind glass and nod yes when they asked if this was the man he'd seen. He said the jacket was gone, the eyes weren't. They charged him with armed robbery and murder. Dad didn't make himself a hero when he told it. He said he got lucky that the regular stayed. He said the blue car leaving before anything happened at his store was the break of a lifetime. He said a landline you can reach without asking is worth more than it looks like, and a lot full of truckers is better than a locked door. He worked that job a while longer and then moved on. He still remembers the thud of that car stopping and the way the caller's voice scraped raw on the word dead. He remembers the jacket in summer heat and the shape under it. To the long haul who hung around with my dad that night, thanks. Wherever you are, I hope the coffee's hot and the miles are easy. And to anyone who thinks nothing happens on empty highways at 3 a.m., it does. Sometimes the only difference between a story you tell and a story someone else tells about you is who stayed until the bad feeling left.